goes across a small patch of ground, but it doesn't feel like a walk. If you tried to turn this in anywhere, you wouldn't get a good mark, you wouldn't get hired at the job. That is not an acceptable walk cycle. So how do we approach actual walk cycles? That's what we're covering today. First thing to think about is this quote from Ken Harris, who is one of the old kind of original greats of animation. He worked on Bugs Bunny and the Thief and the Cobbler. He said, a walk is the first thing to learn. You learn all kinds of walks because walks are the toughest thing to do right. There is a lot of basic principles of character acting and animation which exist inside the walk, and once you understand how to do, and as it says there, all kinds of walks, you're going to have a lot of an easier time approaching other types of animation. You're going to understand how cycles work, how weight works, how to control the body to communicate about the character. Now we all know what walking is, I hope. Everyone knows what walking is, and most of us do it every day. I tend to do it constantly, quite a lot around the house. I can tell what member of my family it is because you can hear the difference in the footsteps, you can hear the difference in the weights. In the same way, if you see your friend walking down the opposite end of the street towards you, typically you can kind of recognize them, even though they're quite from a distance. You're able to know who they are. That's because they had a specific way of walking. I had a friend in secondary called Sam. You could always tell it was him. While it's something we all do very naturally, we tend to forget that it's just falling over again and again and catching yourself just before you fall. If you don't put your next foot out while walking, you're going to fall over flat on your face. That's why when babies learn to walk, they fall over or they kind of waddle a little bit. They're forgetting to put their feet out in time, and they're like kind of going like this because the weight is carrying them forward, and they have all about overbalancing. The amount that you lean into a walk indicates speed, so the slower you walk, you tend to walk with a more kind of upright posture at the back, but if you're marching forward, you're leaning all the way into it. Think about your line of action lesson with Francis, about how there is a clear line of motion going through each character. If the character's moving very fast, that line tends to be angled all the way down. That's because their balance is all shifted in a forward momentum. The same comes for walking, for running. If you watch Olympic sprinters, they are leaned all the way forward, they are at a strong angle. If you watch Olympic marathon runners, they all tend to be quite upright because they're moving slower. There is a difference in the balance based on the speed they want to go. Now, this is the first of a few rules we're going to talk about with walks. The key thing to bear in mind of all rules that we talk about across this entire course is that once you learn the rule and you can use the rule, you're able to break the rule in order to display character. So you might have a character who moves very fast, but they bend all the way back when they're going. This is to display their personality in contrast with the norm. So learn the norm first, and then you'll be able to bend it to fit character. Another key part of the walk is being able to lift your foot up, right? Most people don't raise their feet much when they're walking, they just kind of glide along. If I move out here so you can see my feet, they're just kind of barely a centimeter above the ground, and that's why people tend to stub their toe or get it caught on things. This isn't how everyone walks, right? If a soldier's walking, they've got their feet going all the way up, right? But most people tend to keep it quite low to the ground. Think about how foot height influences character. This is a very basic chart of a walk cycle, what we call the normal walk. This is taken from the book called The Animator's Survival Kit by Richard Williams, one of the chief animators and I believe director as well on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Again, another one of the great classically trained animators. I do recommend everyone gets this book and gives it a read. It is, I believe, hold on. It's available on Amazon. It's £25 right now. It's a huge book like this. It's about this thick. It's a huge tome. It's £25 right now. And I, of course, cannot condone for you to type in Animator's Survival Kit PDF. Pirate this book at all, even though it is so clearly available on the internet. Don't do that. Please spend your money. Please buy this book. Don't Google search for free version online. But if you did click on it, it would just happen to come up so very easily with all 300 pages just there for you to scroll through and have a read through. So easy. But again, don't do that. Do that. So that's where a lot of the diagrams that we're going to be using today comes from. This book is old. It's very old, and that's because things don't change
all that much when it comes to the basics of this. People are still walking the same way, we're still trying to animate walks the same way. So even though the advice in this book talks about classically trained paper flipping animators, it's all incredibly relevant to digital animators and to 3D animators. The laws of motion still exist the same. So a basic breakdown of this chart is these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, technically 6, but 5 key poses of a walk. You have what is called the mediant pose, or the contact pose, where a person is stood right in the middle, feet equally spaced apart. This is the moment at which the foot makes contact with the ground. In the next pose, the weight then shifts, so all the weight is being moved onto that second leg, and the back leg begins to come up. Before then, what is called the going up pose. This is when the head is at the highest. This is not at the highest, sorry, that's the up pose. This is the going up pose where your momentum is being shifted up before the up pose where that person is on their tiptoes as the next foot is coming across before going back to the contact pose again. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see, it's just one continuous motion going up and down. Inside this feet movement here, where this foot, the weight shifts onto it, and then it tips up before becoming the back foot of this contact pose, is the head movement. You see the way the head bobs up and down on the walk, like that there. Because of the action of the foot, the entire body is shifted up and down, giving this walk its character. If you look at the way people walk in real life, it's very rare for someone to just glide along perfectly with their head maintaining the exact same level. It's not as exaggerated as this for sure, but there is always going to be that slight bob up and down, and that's what gives you walk the motion. If you see someone, there's a wall coming up to just below my neck here, and I was walking along, you could tell I was walking because the top of my head would be bobbing up and down. If I was on one of those like hoverboard things or on roller skates and I was just going perfectly along still, you'd be able to tell I wasn't walking because there was no bobbing up and down. Also key to note in this diagram is the way that the shoulder rolls forward. You see how it's starting at the back pose and it's moving forward, so the body is rotating in 3D shape as it goes around. In a normal walk cycle as well, the position of the arms and the legs are flipped. So you don't tend to see people walking around like this, where the arms and the legs are on the same side. You tend to see people walking with the opposite arm going forward to the leg. Just keeps the balance natural, keeps it going through. This chart has all the key poses of a walk on. It does not have every single frame that you'll be drawing for a walk. These are the key notes to hit, if you like, in making a walk. So, when it comes to acting and walk, while this normal walk is very helpful for learning how they physically work, how the physics is interacting, how the body is interacting, it won't do much to tell us about character. Someone who walks like that isn't going to be very appealing to the audience. We're not going to learn anything about them from the way they walk. They're just going to be walking normally, which will be very boring to look at. If every single person here turns in for their final piece, their 12-frame walk cycle, that walk exactly, no matter what sort of character that you have designed to do this walk, it's going to be very boring for us to mark, and you're all going to get the same low mark, okay? Because there won't be any character in it. So let's try and avoid that. This is what we're going to be working on today to learn, and then next week we'll focus on putting in character into it. But a starting point for many actors when trying to figure out the character is the walk. It's the way that this person carries themselves in life. You've got to think about, when it comes to your characters, how are they doing something as simple as getting from point A to point B? What does it say about their personality? If you've got a character who's very sad, they're going to walk along very slowly, shoulders slumped down, arms not moving at all. If you've got someone who's very happy, very jovial, they're going to be like bouncing around, their arms going crazy, aren't they? Animation is a form of acting. Get used to thinking like the character and working out their walk. You've got to be able to assume their point of view. Has anyone here done any acting before at all? Anywhere? Animation in general is you've got to be okay with looking a bit goofy and acting stuff out yourself. Professional animators film themselves reference footage acting like the characters. Now, an arm swing as well is another big one. Are they keeping their arms stiff to their side while they're walking, or are they swinging them around doing something crazy? These are all key things that you can change once you've learnt the normal walk in order to give your walk character. So, weight is the other key rule to bear in mind here. Rotoscoping, or tracing from live footage, is a type of animation but it tends to lead to floaty and useless animation. It's cool for being its own thing, but it is not a substitute for actual animation where you're not trying to achieve a rotoscope style. When you trace real footage, it loses all the ability of weight. While video reference is great, it doesn't translate perfectly into real life. Now obviously, if someone's walking along in real life, they don't look weightless. You can tell, walking along, they are normal, they are a person, they are walking, they have weight, they interact with the world. This does not translate into animation for some reason. We don't really know why you can't trace over it perfectly and it loses all sense of that, but it's just how it is. So, to combat this, we exaggerate particularly in the going down and the up pose. So we're really exaggerating how far someone goes down and comes up on their walk. All of this weight is incredibly important for making your character feel like they actually exist in the scene. If you can see gravity interacting with your character in this way, it makes the whole thing believable, and that's the main thing that we're always trying to aim for with animation. We don't need them to believe it's realistic, we just need them to believe that the character is interacting in that one world. And weight is how you accomplish that in a walk cycle. So, let's go through the basics of constructing a normal walk before I set you all messing around in Adobe Animate covering them. We're going to start off, or we would start off with the two contact positions. These are the points at which both feet are touching the ground, the front one for the first time. You can plan out your walk either on a cycle on the spot, so someone is just looping in the same place, or you can plan it out going across the stage what you're doing. In both cases, you're going to want to draw out the two contact poses first. Note how the contact poses, the head is at the same position, the body is at the same position. What has changed is the orientation of the feet and the orientation of the arms. If you get these two poses and you place them perfectly apart like this, you'll have your walk planned out and you just need to work in the middle. Notice as well how the contact foot, the front foot for this one, is in the same position as the back foot for the next one. This is because this foot, which leads, stays in the same place as the body shifts to the next one. If you have the contact pose here, and then the next contact pose over here, the person is going to glide along the floor like they're slipping on ice as they go. So you want to keep the 2 feet from the contact pose in the same place. Once you've got that pose, right in the middle, you will add the passing position. This is the point at which the back foot passes over in front, or behind, indeed, the foot that's currently in contact with the ground. Don't worry, we have a diagram at the end with all of these on for you to use as reference. Once you've got the passing pose, most people go and add the down pose. Now look at the way this one headline is the same for these two, but it's not the same for either of these. There is already an arc forming with the heads here. On the down pose, this is when the feet positions are at their widest. The weight has shifted all the way onto that front foot now being flat. This back foot is beginning to bend down, and the arms are at their widest point. This is like this point here before then they go up. And then finally there is the up pose here. This is the point of push-off where the momentum shifts around. So like we were talking about walking being just falling over again and again, this contact pose shifts into the falling over with the down pose, and then the passing and the push-up creates the momentum to then fall over again into that next step there. You see the way this is way high up compared to the rest of it? A normal person's head is not going to bob that much in real life, but in animation it becomes a necessity so that we can see that motion going through. Once we have set all of our poses like that, the next step comes in what we call setting the tempo. When we have our new poses of the passing, the contact, the going down, the up, we need to decide how fast this person is walking. The speed of how someone walks is how many frames it takes to complete a cycle of movement. So how many times it takes for them to go from contact pose 1 to contact pose 2. If there's more frames, they're going to move slower. So if you have 4 frames in between contact pose 1 and contact pose 2, they're moving very fast. If you have 24 frames in between them, they're going to be moving very slow. It's all about the amount of drawings you're putting in between those 2 positions. Your project mentions a 12-frame walk cycle as a hand-in. This means that there are 12 drawings, each exposed for 2 frames total, for a total of 24 frames. So you'll be doing 12 individual drawings which lasts for a total of 24 frames, so exactly a second. The character will have to complete a step with each foot and return to the starting position. Okay? So that will give you 6 drawings for each step going over. But this is not the only amount of time it takes people to walk. This is just the most average walking speed. The reason we've set you 12 is because from experiments done by another great animator named Milt Kahl, and also what can be observed in real life, most people are averagely walking at 12 frames, or at 12 frames a second. It's the most natural style of walking. It takes them about a second to complete 2 cycles of motion. If I'm just walking along, the time it takes me to get to the same position again is almost certainly exactly a second. That's 2 steps every single second. But there are other tempos that exist as well. If it takes you 4 frames to get back to the start, that's going to be a very fast run. At 6 frames, it's more of a speed walk. At 8 frames, it is a slow run, or what we call a cartoon walk. People tend to walk a bit faster and suited to a slower walk. So a 16 frame, a 24 frame, or a 32 frame. If you want to do more animation to sell us on that character more, you're not going to be in trouble for doing more work. We're going to love to see it, okay? That's not an excuse to only do 4 drawings and hand that in. But if you're looking at these other ones down here, and you're thinking, yeah, my character's really elderly, or they're like a huge giant who like takes ages to move, and actually I need those 32 frames to really take the walk to the next step, go for it. I would encourage that. It's part of experimentation. Make sure you get the 12 frames learned first, but once you're done with that and you want to experiment and you want to go further, that's the exact sort of thing that we're going to love to see. So, I've covered the basics of what goes into a walk cycle. Now what I would love you all to do is in Adobe Animate, using this guide here, I'd love you to start putting together, and then going on to frame 7, so you've got it going the opposite way. Don't go back to here. Go back to frame 2, but flip the arms and the legs going round, okay? Does everyone understand what I want you to do? Right, get going. I'm not going to add the other layer actually because we're not drawing over the top, but you've got them split into the individual frames. Let's see what's on each frame here. Okay, so get rid of this first one.
Can you tell me what you're pressing as well?
So that was Shift FN F5 to remove the frame entirely. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames, all with the same drawing on. So on frame 1, I'm going to delete everything except the first pose. I've done that on frame 5 there.
So you have to start at frame 1.
Yeah. On frame 2, everything except pose 2. It's done that on frame 3 for some reason. Hold on. Oh, it's because you're on 1s. That's why I'm getting confused. I just need to do something with this. This just because it did it on both frames there. I've extended out the frame with everything on it and then made it its own separate frame again. So frame 3, everything except pose 3. Frame 4. Like that. And then let's because you've got 6 poses here. I'm gonna do FN F5 to extend that pose out, expose that frame out. And then FN F6 to turn it into its own individual drawing. And then frame 5, everything except pose 5. And then frame 6, everything except frame 6. And now we're gonna move across, but we've got the same thing here that we had on that one, where there's too much space between them. So I turn on onion skinning here. I'm going to go through frame by frame and move it so that front foot stays in the same position. So if you want to do that, then you'll see me the rest.
Thank you.
So you see, because this foot and that foot are the same, we don't want it all on the same spot. What we want is for that one anchor point, that foot, to stay in the same place. So we've got that here where it goes down. and then it stays there on that third one. But on the fourth one, this foot is that foot, so we want to move this forward to be there, and then that last frame over to there like that, and you'll see he takes a step forward.
Oh, right.
And then once we've done that, you just do the same with the next step. So it's the same things again, but reversed arms and legs, and then you do that enough times, and you've got it going all the way forward.
Okay.
There, I think he continues it down in one of these. Yeah, so you see, once you add that one bend there, suddenly these poses have to change to accommodate that. If you're comfortable with the normal walk cycle now, what I'd love for you to do is to do something similar to this, where you start with 2 regular contact poses, and then put your own spin on that middle passing pose, and then obviously your in-betweens and your up pose and stuff will have to change from that. And just see the way that affects character.